In the heart of Romba village, where the sun kissed the golden fields and the wind carried the scent of fresh spices, there lived a young woman named Zawadi. She was known far and wide for her extraordinary cooking skills. Her meals could make even the saddest soul smile. Zawadi had inherited her talents from her late mother, Nuru, who had once been the most respected cook in the village. Every morning, she would set up a small wooden stall near the marketplace, stirring pots of simmering stews, roasting spiced meats, and preparing fluffy, golden bread that melted in one's mouth. Villagers lined up eagerly, waiting for their turn to taste her meals. But despite her talent, life was not easy for Zawadi. She was often at a young age, left with nothing but her mother's recipes and an old iron pot. While others in the village had family and wealth, Zawadi struggled to survive, selling food just to buy enough ingredients for the next day. She had one dream: to own the biggest food stall in Romba village. She imagined a grand kitchen, where people from all around would gather to eat her meals. But dreams required gold, and gold was something she did not have. The mysterious sickness. One day, as the village bustled with life, a sudden wave of sickness struck. It started with a few villagers complaining of stomach pain after eating at a food stall run by an elderly woman named Mama Jolia. Mama Jolia had been selling food for 20 years, and people trusted her until now. As the sickness spread, fear gripped the village. People whispered about curses and bad omens. Some said Mama Jolia had been cooking with unclean hands, while others believed it was the work of dark magic. It wasn't long before the elders gathered at the village square and declared that Mama Jolia's food was to blame. She must leave Romba village, the chief declared, his voice heavy with judgment. We cannot risk more lives. The people agreed without hesitation. Mama Jolia was banished that very evening, leaving behind her food stall empty and abandoned. Zawadi's opportunity. Zawadi watched everything unfold from a distance. Though she felt sorry for Mama Jolia, she couldn't ignore the opportunity before her. The busiest food stall in the market was now empty. That night, as she sat outside her small hut, staring at the flickering flames of her cooking fire, a thought entered her mind: what if she took Mama Jolia's place? The next morning, before the sun had even risen, Zawadi gathered her belongings and rushed to the empty stall. She set up her pots, sharpened her knives, and laid out the best ingredients she had. When the villagers arrived at the marketplace, they were surprised to see her there. Zawadi, one of them asked, "Are you taking over Mama Jolia's stall?" She nodded with determination. "I want to continue serving the village." At first, people hesitated. Fear still lingered in their hearts, and the sickness from before had made them wary. But as the scent of Zawadi's food filled the air, spices, slow-cooked meat, and freshly baked bread, curiosity won over. One by one, the villagers approached. They took small bites, then bigger ones. And just like that, Zawadi's food stall became the busiest in the market. Success and envy. Days turned into weeks, and Zawadi's success grew. She made more money than ever before, enough to buy better ingredients, finer pots, and even a small roof to cover her stall. But as her fortune rose, so did the whispers of envy. Some villagers murmured that she had been too lucky, too fast. Others side-eyed her success, wondering how a simple orphan could achieve what others had failed to do in years. And then, the old woman arrived. The arrival of Mama Nia. It was late in the evening when Zawadi noticed her. A hunched figure, wrapped in dark robes, standing at the edge of the marketplace. Her eyes, sharp and knowing, watched Zawadi with quiet interest. Slowly, the old woman stepped forward, moving like a shadow against the night. "Zawadi," she whispered, her voice like rustling leaves. "You are a gifted cook, but tell me, do you wish to be more than this? Do you wish to be truly great?" Zawadi hesitated. There was something unsettling about this woman. I already do well enough, she said carefully. The old woman chuckled, her voice thick with amusement. Well enough. Child, I have seen many rise and fall in this village. You may have good today, but fortune is fickle. The villagers will turn on you just as they did with Momo Julia. Do you wish to keep your success forever? The question sent a chill through Zawadi's spine. She had seen how quickly the village had cast out Momo Julia. Could the same fate await her? The old woman reached into her robes and pulled out a small wooden box, its surface worn and ancient. In here lies the key to power. A secret known only to a few, the woman said, her dark eyes gleaming. Take it, and your place as the greatest cook in Ramba village will never be questioned again. Zawadi stared at the box, her heartbeat quickening. Something inside her whispered a warning to refuse, to run. But another part of her, the part that dreamed of success, of wealth, of never struggling again, reached for the box. As her fingers touched the wood, the old woman smiled knowingly. Use it wisely, child, she murmured, stepping back into the shadows. And remember, everything has a price. The woman vanished into the darkness, leaving Zawadi standing alone with the wooden box in her hands. She stared at it, unsure if she had made the greatest decision of her life, or the worst mistake she would ever make. Zawadi sat in her small hut, staring at the wooden box on her table. The old woman's words echoed in her mind. In here lies the key to power. But everything has a price. A part of her wanted to throw it away. She had never trusted dark magic or strange tricks. But another part, the part that feared losing everything, couldn't ignore it. Her fingers trembled as she slowly lifted the lid. Inside, wrapped in faded cloth, was a small bundle of wiry black hair and a tiny clay jar filled with dark powder. Zawadi frowned. What kind of secret to power was this? It looked nothing more than dirt and hair. Yet, as she held the objects in her hands, a strange sensation washed over her, as if an unseen force was wrapping around her like invisible vines. The air in the room grew colder, and for a moment, she thought she heard a whisper. A soft voice, hissing in the shadows. Use it, and they will never doubt you. Zawadi shook her head and quickly shut the box. No. This was foolishness. She had become successful because of her hard work, not magic. She didn't need dark tricks to keep her place in the market. Or so she thought. The market begins to change. Over the next few days, something strange began to happen. The villagers who once rushed to her stall started hesitating. Some even walked past without stopping, their eyes filled with uncertainty. One morning, as she prepared her food, a group of 3 village women stood nearby, whispering among themselves. Zawadi pretended not to hear, but their words stung like thorns. She took over Momo Julia's stall too quickly. What if she's the one who cursed her? I heard she talks to spirits at night. Zawadi's heart sank. She could feel it. The doubt was creeping in. People were starting to turn against her, just like they had with Momo Julia. She couldn't let that happen. She wouldn't let that happen. The forbidden ritual. That night, as the moon hung low in the sky, Zawadi sat in her hut, staring at the wooden box. She had sworn not to open it again. But the whispers in her mind wouldn't let her rest. Her hands, almost as if moved by something beyond her control, reached for the bundle of black hair. Use it to cleanse the food. The old woman's voice echoed in her thoughts. With slow, trembling hands, she took a few strands of the wiry hair and ran them across the surface of her cooking pot. She then opened the clay jar and sprinkled a pinch of the dark powder into the stew she had been preparing for tomorrow. As soon as the powder touched the broth, the air in the room shifted. The stew bubbled more intensely, releasing an aroma so rich, so intoxicating, that it made Zawadi dizzy with hunger, despite the fact that she had just eaten. A sudden knock on her door startled her. She spun around, her heart pounding. Zawadi. It was Otieno, her childhood friend. She quickly covered the box and opened the door, forcing a smile. "What are you doing up so late?" Otieno asked, stepping inside. Her nose twitched as she inhaled the thick aroma in the air. "Your food smells different tonight," she added, eyeing Zawadi with curiosity. Zawadi swallowed hard. "I tried a new spice." Otieno shrugged. "Whatever it is, it smells incredible. I can't wait to taste it tomorrow." She left, but as the door closed behind her, Zawadi couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. The feast that shocked the village. The next morning, Zawadi arrived at the marketplace before sunrise. She set up her stall and waited, her heart pounding with anxiety. Would they come? Would they eat? Or had she made a mistake? For the first hour, nothing happened. But then, as the sun rose higher, a young boy stopped in front of her stall. "May I have a taste?" he asked. Zawadi hesitated, then served him a small bowl of her stew. The boy took one spoonful, then another, and suddenly, his face lit up with delight. "This is the best food I've ever had," he exclaimed. His mother, curious, asked for a bowl as well. She tasted it, and her eyes widened. Within minutes, more villagers arrived. One by one, they took a bite, and a strange look of pure satisfaction washed over them. "Zawadi," an elder said, licking his fingers, "what have you done to your cooking? It tastes unlike anything we've ever had before." Zawadi forced a nervous smile. "A special ingredient," she lied. Before long, a long line formed in front of her stall. The very people who had doubted her just a day ago were now begging for more. By midday, all her food was gone. For the first time, she had nothing left to sell because she had sold every last bowl. Zawadi had won them over. She had secured her place. Or so she thought. The price of power. That night, Zawadi sat alone in her hut, staring at the wooden box. She should have felt happy. She had beaten the whispers. The village loved her once more. And yet, as she looked down at her hands, she noticed something strange. Her fingertips, once smooth and youthful, looked slightly darker, rougher. And her nails had grown longer overnight. A shiver ran through her. She rushed to the small mirror by her bedside, leaning in close. Her reflection stared back at her, but something wasn't right. For a brief moment, she swore she saw a pair of dark, watching eyes behind her own. She blinked. The image was gone. Her breath hitched. She turned to the wooden box. A single whisper slithered into her ear. "Now that they love you, don't let them forget you." Zawadi clenched her fist. She had started something. And she feared there was no turning back. The days that followed were unlike any other in Zawadi's life. Her stall had become the most famous in Rumba village. People flocked from nearby towns, eager to taste the food that was said to be blessed by the ancestors. But as her wealth grew, so did the whispers. And the shadows, they watched. The change within. One evening, as Zawadi prepared for another day at the market, she noticed something strange. Her hands, once soft and smooth, had grown rougher, the skin darker than the rest of her body. Her nails, longer, sharper, seemed to glisten under the candlelight. She frowned. Was it just her imagination? She touched her hair, once thick and black, it now had strands of silver running through it. Zawadi's breath quickened. This wasn't normal. She shook her head, forcing herself to ignore the unease creeping into her bones. "You are overthinking. Everything is fine. The food is selling. That is all that matters." But as she turned back to her cooking pot, she swore she saw movement in the corner of the room, a shape, a shadow that shouldn't have been there. When she spun around, nothing. The wooden box sat on the shelf, untouched. Yet, somehow, she felt its presence. As if it was watching her. The jealous eyes of the village. The success of Zawadi's food angered some. Especially the women. Among them was Naima, the wife of a powerful village elder. Naima had once run her own food stall, but now no one came to her. Her husband had even begun praising Zawadi's cooking, and it made her blood boil. She is using something unnatural, Naima whispered to her friends one night. No one becomes this successful overnight. One of the women nodded. She took Mama Julia's stall too fast. She never lets anyone see her cook, another added. Naima's jealousy turned into obsession. An obsession turned into a plan. The forbidden discovery. That night, as the village slept, Naima crept towards Zawadi's hut. She had waited for hours, watching from the shadows, until she was sure Zawadi had gone to sleep. The door was slightly open, and Naima slipped inside like a whisper in the wind. She moved cautiously, her eyes scanning the dimly lit room. Then, she saw it. A small wooden box, sitting on the shelf. Naima's heart pounded. She felt something was inside. Something evil. She hesitated for a moment. Then, her fingers trembled as she lifted the lid. What she saw inside made her gasp in horror. A bundle of wiry, black hair. A small clay jar filled with dark powder. And at the bottom, a tiny carved figure, shaped like a woman with no face. Naima's blood turned cold. She stumbled back, knocking over a clay bowl in her panic. The noise echoed through the hut. Her breath hitched. Then, she heard it. A voice, low, whispering, coming from the shadows. You shouldn't be here. Naima froze. The air in the room grew heavy. It felt like something ancient and unseen had woken up. Then, footsteps. Zawadi was awake. The confrontation. Naima bolted for the door, her heart hammering, but she was too late. Zawadi stood in the doorway, her face hidden in the darkness. Her eyes gleaming like two burning embers. Naima gasped. What is this? She stammered. What have you done? Zawadi did not blink. She stepped closer, the candlelight flickering across her face. I should ask you the same thing, she said softly. Naima trembled. You are using dark magic, aren't you? She whispered. That's why your food is so powerful. That's why the people love you. Zawadi tilted her head, her expression unreadable. Is that what you believe? She asked, stepping closer. Naima took a step back, fear thick in her throat. I will tell the elders, she warned. They will know what you have done. Silence. Then, Zawadi smiled. But there was no kindness in it. Only something ancient and knowing. The elders, she mused. Do you think they will believe a jealous woman over the one who feeds their families? Naima's breath caught in her throat. She could see it now. Zawadi was not afraid. Zawadi had already won. But as Naima turned to flee, Zawadi's voice stopped her cold. You saw the box. That means I cannot let you leave. Naima spun around, her blood turning to ice. A shadow moved behind Zawadi, something not quite human. Naima screamed. Then, the candlelight went out. The next morning, the sun rose over Ramba village, warm and golden. People gathered at the market, chatting, laughing, waiting for Zawadi's stall to open. But something was different. Naima was nowhere to be seen. And when someone finally went to look for her, they found her hut empty, her belongings untouched. It was as if she had simply disappeared. Zawadi arrived at the market as usual, her smile bright. She set up her store, her hand steady as she stirred her pots. The villagers lined up, eager for her food, unaware of what had happened in the dead of night. And as she served the first bowl, a chilling whisper echoed through her mind. Now that they love you, don't ever let them stop. Zawadi's smile did not falter. She had crossed the line. And there was no turning back. The disappearance of Naima was the talk of Rumba village for days. People whispered theories. Some said she had run away in shame, others murmured that she had offended the ancestors. But Zawadi knew the truth. She felt it in her bones, in the way the wind seemed to carry whispers only she could hear, in the way her reflection in the river sometimes looked a little different than before. Naima was gone. And yet, no one came looking for her. The village moved on, distracted by Zawadi's food, by the irresistible flavor that made them forget their troubles. And that, Zawadi realized, was power. The unquestioned queen of the market. Zawadi's store was now the most powerful in the entire region. People traveled from other villages, drawn by the legend of her cooking. Some called her blessed. Some called her chosen by the ancestors. But some still watched her with suspicion. Among them was Elder Jabari, the oldest and most respected leader in the village. He had lived long enough to see things that others ignored. And something about Zawadi unnerved him. One evening, as the market emptied and Zawadi counted her earnings, Elder Jabari approached her. "You are doing well for yourself," he said, his voice calm but firm. Zawadi smiled. "I only do what I can to feed the people." Jabari's dark eyes did not leave her face. "Tell me," he said, stroking his beard, "what is your secret?" Zawadi's heart pounded. She kept her smile steady. "There is no secret, Elder. Just good ingredients and love for the craft." Jabari nodded slowly. But his eyes never blinked. "I have lived many years," he said. "I have seen the rise and fall of great men and women. I have seen success earned through honest hands, and success taken through darker means." Zawadi's hands tightened around the edge of her store. "Be careful, child," Jabari said, his voice almost a whisper. "When something comes too easily, it is never truly yours." Then, without another word, he turned and walked away into the night. For the first time in weeks, Zawadi felt fear. The curse begins. That night, Zawadi could not sleep. The shadows in her heart shifted, as if they were watching her. The whispers in her head grew louder. "They are watching you. They will take it all away. You must act first." Zawadi clenched her fist. She wouldn't let them ruin her. She had worked too hard. The wooden box sat on her shelf, silent. But she could feel its presence like a heartbeat in the room. Slowly, she reached for it. As her fingers brushed the wood, a cold wind rushed through the hut, though the windows were shut. She opened the lid. Inside, the black powder and hair looked the same as before. But now, a tiny bone sat beside them. Zawadi's stomach turned. She had never seen the bone before. Had it always been there? The whispers grew louder. "There is still more to do." Zawadi shut the box and stepped back. Her breath came ragged. She didn't want to be afraid. She didn't want to doubt herself. But for the first time, she realized something terrible. This power, this thing she had embraced, it was changing her. The elder's warning. The next day, Zawadi tried to focus on her cooking. She refused to let the fear take root. But Elder Jabari's warning stayed in her mind like a shadow. And as she walked, she noticed something. A strange mark had appeared on her wrist, a dark symbol, like twisted lines carved into her skin. She gasped, scrubbing at it. It wouldn't come off. Her hands shook. Had this been the price all along? Had she taken power without realizing what it would cost her? She turned away from her store, heading toward the forest, toward the only person who might have answers. Mama Nia returns. Deep in the woods, where the air smelled of damp earth and forgotten stories, Zawadi found her. Mama Nia sat by a small fire, stirring something thick and black in a clay pot. She didn't look surprised to see Zawadi. "I was wondering when you'd come," the old woman said. Zawadi's fist clenched. "You said I would be powerful. You never said it would cost me my soul." Mama Nia chuckled. "Child, nothing is free. Did you think you could have greatness and remain the same?" Zawadi's breath hitched. "What is happening to me?" Mama Nia looked at her wrist, at the dark symbol. "You are becoming," she said simply. "The power must take something in return." Zawadi's throat went dry. "And what will it take?" The old woman smiled. "Your womb." Zawadi staggered back. "No." "Yes," Mama Nia whispered. "That is the price of keeping what you have. If you do not give it willingly, it will be taken." Zawadi's chest tightened. "I never agreed to this." Mama Nia tilted her head. "Did you not? You opened the box. You followed the whispers. You chose this path." Zawadi shook with anger. "What if I refuse?" Mama Nia's smile faded. "Then your success will crumble. Your food will rot before it is eaten. Your name will be cursed, and you will lose everything." Zawadi's breath came fast. She had everything she had ever wanted. But now, she faced a terrible choice. Would she sacrifice her future as a mother to keep it? Or would she let go of everything she had built? The fire crackled. The forest seemed to breathe. And deep inside, Zawadi knew. Whatever she chose, she would never be the same again. Zawadi walked back to the village in silence, her heart heavy with the weight of Mama Nia's words. "Give your womb willingly, or lose everything." The thought churned in her stomach like spoiled milk. She had built her success from nothing. She had fought to survive in a world that had never given her a chance. But now, she had to choose. Would she hold on to her power? Or risk losing it all? The whispers in her mind were louder than ever. "Make the sacrifice. Keep what is yours. Don't be weak like your mother." Zawadi squeezed her eyes shut, trying to silence them. She had no one left to ask for guidance. Her mother was gone. Her friend Naima had disappeared. And Elder Jabari. He already suspected something. Zawadi felt alone. Yet, as she neared the village, something felt wrong. The market was too quiet. And then she saw them. A crowd had gathered in front of her store. The village elders. The women. The men. And at the center of them all, stood Elder Jabari. His dark eyes locked onto hers. "Zawadi. We know the truth." The confrontation. Zawadi's chest tightened. "The truth?" she asked, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her throat. Jabari took a step forward. "You have bewitched this village," he said. "Your food is not blessed by the ancestors. It is cursed by the spirits." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Zawadi shook her head. "That is a lie. My food has fed this village. It has brought joy to those who once starved." Jabari's expression did not change. "Then explain this." He raised his hand, and in it, he held the wooden box. Zawadi felt her stomach drop. "No. No, no, no." "How?" Her voice barely left her lips. Jabari's voice boomed over the crowd. "Last night, we searched your home. We found this hidden beneath your bed." Zawadi's breath hitched. Her hands trembled. She wanted to deny it. To scream that it was a lie. But the box was right there. The villagers began to murmur. The whispers were true. She has been using dark magic. We've been eating food touched by evil. Zawadi felt the world tilt beneath her feet. This cannot be happening. This cannot be happening. Then, a scream. A woman collapsed to her knees, clutching her stomach. Then another. And another. People started vomiting, their faces twisted in agony. Zawadi's blood ran cold. Jabari's voice was sharp as a blade. This is the price of your lies, he said. You have poisoned them. Zawadi stumbled backward. No. This wasn't her doing. It had to be something else. Had someone put a curse on her food? Had Mama Nia done this? Then, the whispers returned, louder than ever. They have turned on you. Just like before. You are out of time. Jabari raised his hand toward her. Zawadi, he declared. For your crimes, you will face judgment. The villagers stepped forward, grabbing her arms, pulling her toward the village square. Zawadi fought, kicked, screamed, but it was no use. She was trapped. And for the first time in her life, she realized. She was about to lose everything. The oracle sentence. The villagers dragged her to the center of the square, where a tall, ancient woman stood waiting. The oracle. Her face was lined with age, her eyes cloudy with wisdom that stretched beyond mortal years. The villagers fell silent as she spoke. Zawadi, the oracle said, her voice like distant thunder. You have taken what was not meant to be yours. You have played with power beyond your understanding. Zawadi gritted her teeth. I did what I had to do, she said, her voice defiant. I wanted to survive. The oracle tilted her head, as if studying her. There is a price for such things, she said. And now, you must pay. Zawadi's heart pounded. What will you do to me? The oracle's eyes darkened. You have two choices, she said. The villagers leaned in, waiting for the judgment. Choice 1. You will sacrifice your womb to the spirits and live, but you will never bear children. Never know the love of a family. You will exist, but your bloodline will end here. Zawadi stiffened. A life without children. Without a future beyond herself. The thought made her stomach churn. Choice 2. You will refuse the sacrifice. And in doing so, you will die tonight. The villagers muttered in shock. Zawadi's breath came fast. Her eyes darted between the crowd, searching for someone, anyone, to defend her. But she found nothing but fear and anger. She was alone. She had fought for power, but now she had nothing. Her mind raced. If she sacrificed her womb, she would live. But at what cost? If she refused, she would die. What choice do I have? She took a deep breath, then made her decision. I choose. But before she could finish, a sudden gust of wind tore through the village. The people gasped. The sky darkened. And a voice, deep, ancient, and filled with something inhuman, spoke from the shadows. The choice is no longer yours. Zawadi's body stiffened. A cold hand gripped her soul. And then, darkness. Zawadi awoke to silence. Not the silence of the night. Not the silence of an empty room. But the kind of silence that felt alive, that pressed against her skin like an invisible weight. She sat up quickly, her breath ragged, her heart hammering in her chest. She was no longer in Ramba village. The last thing she remembered was the oracle's judgment, the sky darkening, the voice that wasn't human. Now, she was in a place that shouldn't exist. The ground was black as charcoal, smooth like polished stone. The sky was endless and empty, no stars, no moon, just a vast, hollow darkness. And in front of her, standing perfectly still, was Mama Nia. She looked different. Her face was no longer old and wrinkled, her skin was smooth, her eyes glowing silver. She was not human. She never had been. Zawadi's breath hitched. "What? Where am I?" she whispered. Mama Nia smiled. But it wasn't warm. "You are in the place between," she said. "The place where deals are made and debts are collected. The true price of power." Zawadi shook her head, trying to clear her mind. "This isn't real," she muttered. "I was in the village. I was about to." Mama Nia tilted her head. "You thought the choice was yours," she said softly. "Oh, child, the moment you opened that box, you belonged to us." Zawadi froze. A shadow shifted behind Mama Nia, taking the shape of something tall, thin, and inhuman. A voice, deep, layered, ancient, spoke from the darkness. "She will not give her womb." Zawadi's blood turned to ice. She couldn't see the thing speaking, but she felt it watching her. Mama Nia sighed, as if disappointed. "That is unfortunate," she murmured. The shadow moved closer. "Then we will take something else." Zawadi's lungs tightened. What do you mean?" she stammered. The air grew colder. The thing in the shadows hummed, as if considering its answer. Then it spoke. "Your name." Zawadi blinked. "My name." Mama Nia's smile widened. "Names have power, child. A name is not just what people call you, it is your essence, your soul, your place in this world." Zawadi staggered back, shaking her head. No, I won't do that." The shadows shifted, creeping closer. "Then you will never return." Zawadi's breath caught in her throat. "What?" Mama Nia's eyes gleamed. "Your body will return to the village. But you, the part of you that dreams, that feels, that is truly alive, will stay here." Zawadi felt the weight of those words crash over her. Her body would wake up. She would walk, breathe, exist. But she would not be herself. She would be a hollow thing, a puppet in a world that no longer belonged to her. "A fair trade," the thing in the shadows whispered. Zawadi's knees buckled. "No," she whispered. "Please. I'll do anything." Mama Nia raised a brow. "Anything?" Zawadi nodded frantically, tears stinging her eyes. I just want to live. To be myself. To be free." Mama Nia stepped forward, her face softening slightly. "Then listen well, child," she said. "There is only one way to break the bond. But it will cost you everything you have built." Zawadi stared at her, waiting. "You must return to the village. And burn your stall to the ground." Zawadi's heart stopped. "No. Destroy the food. Spill the pots. Let the fire consume what you have made." Zawadi's hands shook. "Only then will the spirits release you." She felt sick. Everything she had worked for. Every coin she had earned. Every person who had praised her. Gone. She thought of the villagers. Would they turn on her? Would they kill her for it? The whispers in the darkness grew impatient. "Choose now." Zawadi's breath came fast. She had no choice. If she refused, she would be nothing more than an empty shell. With a shaking voice, she whispered, "I will do it." The shadows rippled. Mama Nia's smile returned. "Then wake, child." The world lurched. Zawadi felt herself falling. And then she woke up. Gasping. Sweating. Alive. But she knew. The worst was yet to come. Zawadi woke up gasping for air. She was back in Ramba village, lying on the cold ground in the village square. The villagers stood around her, their faces a mixture of fear and suspicion. Elder Jabari stepped forward. The oracle's judgment was given, he said. And yet, you live. Zawadi forced herself up, her body weak but her mind sharp. She had no time to explain. She had a mission. She had to burn her store. Ignoring the murmurs, she ran through the village, her heart pounding. She reached the marketplace, where her store stood untouched. The pots, the firewood, the sacks of grain, all waiting for her. Her fingers trembled, but she grabbed the torch. One spark. That's all it would take. The villagers arrived, shouting. What are you doing? She's gone mad. Stop her. Zawadi's heart ached. But she had no choice. She threw the torch onto the store. The fire roared to life, devouring everything she had built. The air filled with the scent of burning spices, thick smoke curling into the sky. The villagers watched in horror. Elder Jabari stepped forward, eyes narrowing. What have you done? Zawadi turned to face him, her voice steady. I was cursed, she said. And now, I am free. Silence. Then, the wind shifted. A presence swept through the village, unseen but powerful. The villagers shivered. And Zawadi knew. The spirits had accepted her payment. She had broken the curse. The aftermath. The villagers never spoke of Zawadi's food stall again. They never asked why she had destroyed it. They only whispered one thing. That the girl who had once been the greatest cook in Rumba village had been touched by something dark, and had barely escaped. Zawadi, now free, left Rumba village the next morning. She did not look back. She did not know where she would go. But she knew one thing. She would never cook again.